Well, thanks for coming back to the collaboration space once again. We're still coming to you live from InfoComm 2025. Today, we're introducing a new series of our podcast where we're discussing simplicity and scalability in regards to supporting your technology investments. And to help us host this series is AVI SPL's Jared Letterhandler. Jared, take it away.
Thanks, Nancy. Appreciate you having us. We are here live at InfoComm Day 1. I wanted to introduce my guests here. First, we have Justin Bondi, who is Vice President of Customer Experience. Thanks for joining us, Justin.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. And then we have Simon Cooper, who is Director of Partner Development and Customer Success. Thanks for being here as well, Simon.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Day 1 just underway, how has the foot traffic been now that we're back in sunny, beautiful Orlando?
Well, speaking for NEAT, it's been amazing. I think we have the biggest InfoComm booth we've ever had, and it's jammed. And we're showing a lot of new stuff, specifically around what we're doing with larger rooms, which is exciting. Our modular architecture of our devices working together. We're also showing a lot of what we're doing with App Hub, which is part of Pulse, which I'll tell you about in a little bit. But it's been super exciting and super crowded.
Fantastic, that's awesome. What about for the AVI SPL Symphony booth?
Similar to NEAT, got off with a real fast and furious start, and it's been busy all day. A lot of people coming by to look at Symphony, our MSP toolkit, and our universities and higher education.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's great to be back in Florida, right? We were in Vegas last year, so now back on the East Coast. So in addition to NEAT being a device hardware provider, I know software is also a platform for you folks, and it's NEAT Pulse. Maybe tell us a little bit more about who NEAT Pulse, what NEAT Pulse is?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you can tell by the name, Pulse is kind of the heart of what makes NEAT go in a lot of ways, right? We have our hardware devices, as you talked about. That's how we founded the company. But Pulse kind of brings a lot of that together and also adds a whole bunch of functionality to the devices. A lot of people think of it as more as a management platform, which it absolutely does, but it also does things like expands what the devices can do in terms of making the devices or joining them together so they can work together in a room environment to give you all kinds of different experiences, different use cases, larger spaces. It also allows you to run different software on the devices, right? We've partnered with Zoom, we've partnered with Teams. We recently announced that we're partnering with Google, which is great, but those aren't the only tools that customers want to use. So App Hub, which is part of Pulse, allows you to put many third-party apps or even your own web apps on the devices as well. It's a big deal for us. We actually made t-shirts. This is our App Hub t-shirts that we're wearing today. So that's a big deal for us. And then the third part is that it allows us interoperability into other platforms via our API, which is already very rich. We're building that out, and that's really how we work together with what you guys do at Symphony.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of APIs, obviously we work very closely from a NEAT Pulse to AVI SPL Symphony standpoint. Can you maybe, Simon, help us understand what Symphony is?
Yeah, so Symphony at its core is a monitoring and management platform for AV, UC, and video devices. But more than just monitoring and management, with our deep heritage in AV SPL, we've got a lot of relationships with manufacturers that have allowed us access to APIs and various integrations with, including NEAT, that allows us to bring in a lot of data points from those platforms that we can then produce detailed analytics to allow our end users to really build and understand exactly what's happening across their diverse estate from a single pane of glass, and really just simplify the support and delivery process that a lot of these organizations have in their different support models.
That's fantastic. I mean, it sounds like a very useful tool, both of them actually. So maybe speaking from a tool perspective, can you give us an example of how maybe a customer would leverage each of your tools? Maybe we'll start, Justin, with Pulse.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the management perspective, I think one of the best examples of what a difference maker Pulse can make is what we think of as a best-in-class, basically remote control functionality. So I was just having a conversation with a major East Coast university just right before this session, actually. And they were talking about how powerful that is to allow them to go in from a help desk perspective, help a user in real time, do remote configurations, all that kind of a thing. Being able to go into a device in a room and do anything that you could do as if you were sitting right in front of it. So all kinds of different opportunity. They actually told me that sometimes they put NEAT Neat devices in rooms just so they can get the remote control functionality to help manage the other stuff in the room. Wow. So you can tell that's a pretty powerful story right there. And then also, just the fact that what we're doing with App Hub through Pulse is also allowing several of our major customers to put our devices in spaces outside of a traditional conference room. So think of it as things like, common areas, reception areas, things like that, using third-party applications to do wayfinding, digital signage, visitor management. So if someone wants to check in, print themselves a badge, there's all kinds of companies out there doing those specialized use cases. And App Hub can allow you to put that on our devices for many, many things outside of just conferencing.
It's fantastic to hear how enterprise folks and educational institutions are using that tool. So maybe from a Symphony perspective, how does either Pulse interact and provide that benefit to the client, or how does Symphony really make a client leverage their enterprise more efficient?
Yeah, so where Symphony really comes into its own is in those customer environments that have a mixed estate. So there are very few customers out there today that have a single source manufacturer across their entire estate. Organizations that are maybe transitioning to Neat, or so they have some historic legacy hard endpoints in there, they're moving to Neat, but they've got all this technology that Neat Pulse doesn't necessarily monitor. Symphony is an excellent tool for layering over the top of that to enable the visibility, the control, and the management of those other non-Neat devices. But then leveraging the API integration that we've got between Symphony and Neat Pulse, we can then consume the Neat Pulse monitoring data, as well as the sensor data and things like that Neat Pulse gives us, into that Symphony platform to give the customer support team that single view of everything that's happening within their estate or within individual rooms. And that in itself, I think, is where Symphony really adds massive amounts of value to support teams. Efficiency and effectiveness. A good example of that, we've got a health technology manufacturing company that have got Neat in 80% of their rooms. Okay, Neat Pulse does a fantastic job in those 80% of rooms. But in the 20% where Neat hasn't yet been deployed, the customer's got a bit of a blind spot there from a support point of view. So Symphony being implemented in that scenario can then monitor and manage those rooms. And from a support point of view, because we can bring that Neat data in, the support teams have got that single point. They're not bouncing around different systems to see what's going on. And it just makes everything slicker and more seamless for the support teams, which ultimately then feeds through to the end user experience in the rooms itself.
Yeah, there's no doubt that both of these tools, I think, are extremely important for organizations to leverage. It makes that, return to office and back to the estate, get the most out of from a productivity and efficiency standpoint. So really enjoyed our conversation. Hopefully both of you have a great rest of your week. I want to thank you both for joining. And if you're watching here, we certainly would like you to go to the Neat booth 3901 and the AVI SPL booth at 4220. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks again. And back to you, Nancy.
Well, thank you to Jared for kicking off that series. And thanks to all of our guests who joined us today. And don't forget to follow AVI SPL on YouTube so you never miss an episode of our podcast. And you can also subscribe to The Collaboration Space on your favorite podcast app. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time in The Collaboration Space. For more information, visit avispl.com/meet.